For Tuesday, July 14th, 2020. This is the Pro and Con Show, and I am your host, Michael James Ott. And as always, thanks for coming to the show. Thanks for watching the show. Just encouraging people to to take the time. This is, and I've said it. I'm going to say it over and over and over again. And yes, I'm going to sound like a broken record. I apologize for that. But I need to sound like a broken record. I hope that you will start joining me and talking to your neighbors and friends and community members, also talking like a broken record, about how we can be and must be better citizens, that we need to step back from this polarization that these wealthy, powerful people using propaganda techniques are using upon us, the psychology that they're using upon us to cause us to have these tribes, these cults almost, Republican and Democrat, liberal versus conservative, whatever the simple labels and the associated, emotion stirring adjectives that they use to drive that wedge between big fractions of our country so that they can keep us controlled and in their corner, if you will. And then, they're only battling for a small segment of the population. And I would argue that all of us need to release ourselves, and said in past shows that we need to be independent again. And in fact, so independent that we really need to get rid of the two-party system and adopt this citizen statesman concept, which again, look at past videos and there'll be future ones as well. Citizen statesman, look at past videos. But today's show is called Snapshot. And of course, we're leading up to the election in November. Now it's getting fairly close. So this is something that I've been making these shows in preparation for the November 3rd event here this year. And I don't know, it's probably approaching 400 shows that I've done. And so there'll be another 100-ish before Election Day. And, the whole intent was to, again, talk to you, my fellow citizens, neighbors, community members, about being better citizens. And so today's show is just kind of an informal, ad hoc observation. I call it Snapshot. So I said in the last show, I actually made a little bit of a trip. I went a short distance by car from where I live to some friends that I went to college with, and we spent a few days together. And of course, we had a nice time. It was nice seeing old friends and stuff like that. And that's one of the tough things in this environment, right, with the coronavirus and the concerns over transmission and so on. And some of that socialization is tougher. So, you've got to try to do it when you can, but you have to be careful when you do. All right. But one of the reasons why I wanted to go is on the way to their home, I could travel through a fairly large segment of rural Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin's where I live, and Wisconsin is one of these so-called swing states that sometimes, especially for president, will sometimes vote for the Republican candidate or the Democratic candidate, depending on the general view of the Wisconsin people, and it shifts back and forth. We're kind of independent, if you will, on the whole. There are certainly, if you look at certain Wisconsin voters, they're dyed in the wool, if you will, Democrats, and then there's others that are dyed in the wool Republicans, just like there is everywhere around the country. But the ratio of those is mostly equal, and then there's a significant portion of the population that they kind of, I feel, they kind of vote the way I kind of do, which is which one of these candidates is the best one. And oh, by the way, also professing, and we had this discussion and I talked about Randy in the last show. We had this discussion about here we go again. We don't have the greatest of candidates. Me personally, I think it's way better than last year because I think Mr. Biden is much, much, much better than Hillary Clinton, and especially more acceptable and more centrist and less controversial than Ms. Clinton was a few years ago. But in any case, it's still, and that's again, citizen statesman. go look at the videos, find out about it, start talking to. I got the opportunity to go through western Wisconsin, west central Wisconsin, and I drove. I've got a little low cost convertible with a little ragtop on it, and it was a beautiful, lovely day. And so I drove back roads, and I drove through little towns, and I drove through farmland and stuff like that, and I had a great time. The countryside is beautiful. You saw all kinds of unique things that people have, just individuals, right? Individuals doing things in their yards. Some people have these beautiful floral gardens. Other people have like these different sculptures, basically, that they've made. And then, you travel down the roads themselves. And one of them, I did want to mention this. One of them, I was driving and I purposefully, again, was staying away from the interstates and all this stuff. And so I was on this rural highway and I had to connect to another rural highway. And the GPS system told me to turn on Cut Across Road. I love that. Cut across. And what was especially great about it is this road was, not the widest of things. It was, paved okay, but clearly not like a state maintained road. So I don't know, county maintained by the farmers. I don't know, but no markings on the road, no signs, no speed limit signs. And I'm going on this thing, and this, Wisconsin, a fair amount of Wisconsin is pretty, hilly. And so I'm in my little convertible, and I'm driving along this road, and, the speed limit is 55 unless posted otherwise. So going 55 mile an hour, kind of stuff. And I'm going up and it's just like a freaking free roller coaster. I'm going up these hills, and there's again, no signage or anything. You just come to the crest of this hill. And, and suddenly the earth disappears beneath you, just like in a roller coaster. And then you come down over the top and down you go. And, you get all the changes in inertia and stuff like that. And it was sections of the various highways and roads were like that. And it was a lot of fun to drive on them and go through there. Now, the snapshot that I want in particular to talk about is these areas in Wisconsin back in 2016, they basically were buying into this experiment of voting and supporting Mr. Donald Trump. And so when you drove through some of these areas, I remember some of the farmers, and it's a little early yet. Okay, it's only July, and some of these folks may go ahead and put up signage later supporting Mr. Trump. But at the moment, and I remember back in 2016, roughly the same time of year, driving through similar areas in the rural areas of Wisconsin, and seeing, yard signs, and sometimes there would be like a banner that somebody had somehow gotten hold of and strapped it to a side of a silo or whatever. And they were supportive of Trump-Pence 2016. Okay. And so I'm winding through all of these roads and past farmhouses and through small towns, and I'm trying to pay, somewhat attention. Obviously, I want to pay attention to the road. It's my first priority, but I'm also trying to look around a little bit to see if I'm seeing any of these Trump-Pence signs in the various yards and such. And I have to say that my gut tells me, anecdotally, that that is much less than it was at this approximate time of the year in 2016. And what I think that says to me is that many of the people, or at least some significant percentage of the people that had decided that they are going to try this experiment called electing Donald Trump president, have come to regret the outcome of their attempt. And in all fairness, folks, democracy, and one of the great examples was the Prohibition Amendment, back in the 20s or whatever it was, right? So we tried to ban the use of alcohol here in the United States. And now there are many history books written around that whole experiment of prohibition and how it failed to do what we were trying to do. And in fact, it caused other serious problems like the rise of significant gangster mob, mafia kind of things during that same period. Right? So it's democracy, and maybe that's a good point to make it right now at this moment in the show, is democracy is an experiment. We don't know, we frequently just don't know what the outcome is going to be of our choices. So, you make your best estimate, and this is what the good people of Wisconsin did, who perhaps were supportive of Mr. Trump back in 2016 and now are maybe not supportive of him at this point in time, but back then. Let's try this. Let's try electing this person and see if he makes a significant improvement in the way we're being governed. Because that was his promise, right? He talked about many times, he said, you're going to get tired of winning. He told the people that would come to his rallies, you're going to get tired of winning. And I think a lot of people are tired of Mr. Trump's definition of winning. And I think that's why some significant portion of the folks that, again, thought to support him back in 2016 are now thinking, I can't do that again. And that's really all I really wanted to talk about. So one of the things that I want to make sure I've communicated is that people make their choices. You make your best choices, and I believe in other people like me, like you. Okay. We don't always make the right decisions. We don't always make the right choices. In fact, that's one thing I meant to mention in that previous video with Randy. We talked about that. You make some bad choices. I've made them. He's made them. Everyone makes some bad choices. And we got to live with them, but then we can also make choices to correct them. And I am marginally enthusiastic, hopeful that a significant portion of folks that made what I thought was a bad decision even back in 2016, but they didn't think so. Again, fair, okay?